This conference will now be recorded.
All right. So I think we still do not have everyone, but I think it's already too much of wait. And now we can get started. So in the last session, we started looking into the Dell Boomi platform, right? We understand that there are three tabs: build, deploy, manage, right? And right now we started working on the build tab. To build any integration, what is required? If you want to build any integration in Boomi, which is the core component that is must to have?
Process.
Yes. Yes, process is the core component which needs to be there, and you cannot build any integrations without a process, which is absolutely correct. Now within a process, what do we have to perform different types of actions on the data which will be flowing through this process? What is that entity called as?
Shape.
Shapes, right? Shapes are the actions or operations we perform on the data. How many types of shape we have?
Three types.
We have three types of shapes. Okay, very
Execute,
nice.
connect, execute, logic, and connect.
Okay, we have got execute, logic, and connect. Very nice. So whenever we start our process, there is a shape without which we cannot build any process. Can you name that shape?
Start shape.
Very nice. Star shape is the mandatory shape to have. We cannot build the process without a star shape. Next question: how many types of star shapes do we have, or what are the different flavors we have within
Four
the
types.
star shape?
Four types.
Four types.
Start shape.
Data pass through, no data.
We have no data. We
Connector.
have data
Connector.
pass through. We have
Trading.
trading partner, and we have connector, right? So which is the so star shape typically marks the beginning of the flow, and then which shape marks the end of the flow?
Stop shape.
Stop shape, right? Stop shape marks the end of the flow. Right? And whatever we do typically between these two shapes, which is absolutely correct. So we'll take it forward from here, right? This is where we ended. So I have a tendency to do a quick revision so that we all are on the same page. And now we'll get into our Boomi platform, right? I know some of you have not still received those access and all, but majority of you should have the access to the platform, right? And I will expect you guys to do all these hands-on in parallel so that you don't only have a theoretical knowledge, but you also understand how things would shape up practically, right? So what we'll do is we'll go here on the Boomi process. This is the process we were working on, right? Now let me ask you a question. Do this shape have a revision history?
Yes.
Okay. So if I go to the start shape, does start shape has its own revision history?
No.
Yeah. No.
So it is the component which will have the revision history and not the shapes, right? So start shape is not a component, right? Which is the component we are using right now in this example?
Process.
Process, right? And that will have a revision history which we can see over here. Yes. And I think you know, right, how to roll back to a previous revision history. How can we do that?
You need to select that and it will open in another process canvas. Then we can
Yes,
save it.
very nice. So if let's say I want to go to revision number 8, I can open it like this. It will show me this kind of message which says it's not the latest revision, but the 8th version of it. If I hit save, it becomes the latest one, right? And as many times I hit save, that many revisions should get incremented. Okay, or else if you will make a difference, I mean, even if you move these components like this, right? So save and you will see revision will increase. I think only save might not increase the revision. So let's say I hit save again, revision is not changing, right? If something has changed, right? So even if I just move it over here, then okay, I move, but I didn't save. Let me save. So it will get changed, right? Because eventually what happens is behind the scenes, whatever we are doing over here, this whole code is generated in the XML, right? Even these coordinates. So there is a X coordinate, there is a Y coordinate, right? So what is the distance? Where is that component lying? These all information is there in the XML file. And whenever you're moving these components or sorry, shapes from one place to another, the value of those coordinates are changing, right? And that's why when you hit a save, you see the revision history is getting increased, right? So if I do not move anything, the revision history, and if I hit save, the revision history might not increase because nothing has changed, right? Then you may get confused when I'm moving the component here and there or the shapes here and there. Why is it changing even though I did not make any change in the logic? Because how it will work internally in Boomi is it will draw a comparison between the XML file which was there the last time and the one which got generated now, and that XML file will have the details about those coordinates also, where these shapes are in the canvas, right? So how much distance from the left, how much distance from the bottom, how much distance from the top, all those details would be there in that XML file which is generated behind the scene. You do not have a option to see that file over here there. So you will be always working on the design view, or you can say yeah, graphical view, where you just do a drag and drop of the components, right? So you will not get to see that file, but if you somehow are interested, we will try to show you in the coming session, but you will not see over here in the Boomi platform, right? So I think we are good so far. We understand the basics of it. Now let's say I want to execute this. Okay, so now to execute any entity or to execute any process, we need some runtime engine. Yeah, in order to execute any integration, how do we develop integration? With the help of processes. So I can write, in order to execute any process in Boomi, we need some kind of runtime engine, right? So what that engine will do, you will pass your instructions, it will process that and will return you some response, right? So you have to have some kind of runtime mechanism which is capable of executing the instructions which you have configured in your process and return your response, right? So your instructions might be pull the data from Salesforce, convert this into the database format, push it to the database. So there has to be some entity, right, who is going to execute all these instructions, right? So that entity, we call it as a runtime engine. So what I'm saying is, so far we have been talking about the Boomi Atomsphere platform, we have been talking about the process, we have been talking about the shapes, but now to execute it, I need some kind of runtime engine. So in Boomi, there are different runtimes, or you can say there are different runtime engines. Okay, one is Atom, another is Molecule, then there is Atom Cloud, then there is Group of Atoms. So these all are very, very important. Okay, a lot of people get confused about it. What is atom, molecule, atom cloud, group of atoms, right? And when you're working in this mule, right, you will hear these kind of jargons or keywords which is not so familiar or which is not so commonly used, right? So if you are working on Java or .NET or maybe even Oracle database, you might not have heard something like atom, molecule, right? But then when you must have read or gone through the chemistry, right, in your school days, right? So or in your secondary school, you must have heard of these things, right? Atom, molecule, atom cloud is another thing, and group of atoms. So these are the four different types of runtime offerings we have in Boomi. Whenever you go for any interview, right, these are the questions, or even like you go for a client interview, right? So they may expect you to know the differences among these. They will try to confuse you around these, and let's understand these one by one. Okay, Atom is the simplest runtime offering we have in Boomi. It is single tenant, single node runtime engine. This is required to be installed and maintained by the enterprise. It is a single tenant, single node runtime engine, and this is required to be installed and maintained by the enterprise. When I say enterprise means it is the company who is going to purchase the licenses, right? So let's say today we are the enterprise, we are doing some training. So if we are using the Atom as the runtime engine, right, we have to ourselves install it and we have to maintain it ourselves. So now what is the meaning of single tenant? So it is going to cater to a one company at a time. You cannot have two different accounts using the same Atom, right? So now when we start working on Boomi, we have different accounts. You have one account, I have my own account, right? Or it might happen. So there are two things. Let's understand this. One account may have multiple users. Okay, one account may have multiple users. So for example, if I go here, right, and I will come out of the full screen mode. So here we have an option, exit full screen. I'll go to the, let's say, so where do I want to go? I want to go to see settings. Okay, in settings, I have user information, right? So this is the user with which my account is registered. So within this account, I may have some other users also. Okay, so for example, these are few of the users which I have, but then these all are part of the same account. Understand this. Now you have a you might have a different account, right? Let's say you're working for Infosys or you're working for some XYZ customer. So that customer may have a different account. It is something is called as multi-tenant when two different accounts can share something. Okay, so yesterday I was giving an example of a flat, right? Let's say there is a family residing in one room of the flat and there is another family residing in other room of the flat, right? And they start sharing something. So the point I'm trying to make over here is it is not called as multi-tenant when multiple users of the same account can use it. It is called as multi-tenant when multiple different accounts can use the same runtime. So if I install an Atom, I will be able to use only in my dedicated account. Okay, I cannot use a single Atom in two different accounts. That's why it is called as a single tenant offering. Then what is the meaning of single node? That it is going to be installed in a machine, right? In a single machine. And if that machine goes down, then your complete integration went down, right? You do not have any kind of high availability. So in this kind of runtime, there is no high availability. What does high availability means? High availability means if one
When
instance, yeah, please go ahead.
yeah, kind of a load balancing. One is down, second prime, secondary will take up. Secondary is down, primary will take up.
Very nice. So it's a mechanism to ensure that your system is up and running at any given time, and you will have kind of different nodes, right? As I'm not sure who was speaking, but yeah, you rightly mentioned there is a concept of primary nodes. I mean, again, there are a lot of ways. There are active passive. There are different ways you can configure your high availability, but the whole idea is that we will have a multiple instances of the software running in different machines, right? So that what's going to happen is if one machine goes down, okay, if one machine goes down, then another machine may be still running the software, and things get processed, right? It's not that your request completely gets failed. It's something like, you go to a shop, right? Let's say you place an order for something. So you go to a restaurant and you place an order, right? So there are multiple people, so there are multiple requests coming in. It might happen that if that restaurant has only one waiter, right, and he's sick, he's not available, then the whole business uh, uh, gets on a stake. If they have only one chef and the chef is not available, then the whole business is at stake. So that's why if they want to have a scalable model, if they want to make sure they don't lose any business, they will have multiple chefs, they will have multiple waiters. So if one is not available, other one is able to take that responsibility, and eventually at any given time we don't get into a stage wherein our business gets impacted, right? Now you might ask me that this kind of requirement must be there for every business, right? Why would anyone go for Atom? Because it is not multi-tenant. Oh, sorry, and it is a single node. Single node means single instance is running. If that crashes, then your complete integrations stop. So answer is, you might be right. There is no high availability, but still, lot of enterprises use this Atom, especially when we have batch-based integrations. Okay, whenever we have
Sumit, sorry
batch-based
to interrupt.
integration, come
Hi,
again.
Sumit, sorry to interrupt. Yeah, actually, I want to ask one thing that single tenant, you are saying that at a time only one user can access the one account. Am I right? Please correct me if I'm wrong.
One account. Yeah. So there
Yeah.
can be multiple users who
So,
can access from an account, but single tenant means only one account can access it. Actually, I think you were missing in
one
yesterday's
account.
session. Actually, we talked about the
Yeah, yeah,
multi-tenancy
that's
yesterday.
why.
Okay,
Okay.
multi-tenancy
Okay, then let's do
means,
this session. I will go through. Yeah, please go ahead.
yeah, multi-tenancy would means when the single instance of the software is used by multiple different accounts. So your Dell Boomi Atomsphere platform is running on multi-tenancy architecture, which means there is a single instance of platform, right? So Boomi is not spinning up a new instance of the platform for all of us, right? So let's say today I have the license, tomorrow you want to go and purchase the license. So they will not provision a separate instance for you. There is a same instance, and the architecture they have built is such that even though there are multiple accounts, right? Even though there are multiple accounts, these multiple accounts can work on the same instance in such a manner that they don't overlap any of their activities. That is multi-tenant. I gave an example of a flat also. Now within a flat, if we have, let's say, three different families or three different individuals staying, so that is, there are multiple tenants, right, using the same apartment. So that is multi-tenancy, right? So they have same gate, but still they are partitioned in a way that they will have some doors outside their room, right? So whatever is happening inside
Yeah,
their room is known to them, and whatever is happening in other room is hidden from them, until and unless they mutually agree and share their, kind of some kind of keys, so that one person from one room can go to another person's room, right? Otherwise that's not possible. That's how multi-tenancy works. Now what I'm saying is, Atom is single tenant means this cannot be shared across. So if you installed an Atom, right, so whenever you install an Atom, you always, or Boomi will always ask you which account do you want this Atom to be tied with. Let's say if I tied this Atom to Sumit's account, I cannot use this Atom for Manjot's account. That's not possible. Okay. So that's what single tenant means. But if in Sumit's account there are multiple users, right? If within Sumit's account there are multiple users, those multiple users can use this Atom. Are you understanding? But
yeah, yeah.
two
Now
different
got it.
two different accounts and two different users are completely different things. Account is the complete subscription. So within a subscription, I can add n number of users. So those people will be able to share, because Boomi doesn't think from the user perspective. Boomi thinks from the account perspective. Okay. But now if there are
Okay.
there is another account, I'll not be able to share this atom across 2 or more accounts.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I was saying there is no high availability over here, but this might definitely work out for batch based integrations, because in batch based integrations generally these are scheduled integrations, right? And I'm not saying that it will always work out, but yeah, I have worked for many enterprises where we use atom and things are working out well, right? Scheduled integration, so when the integrations are not so time sensitive, when the load is not too high, right? They prefer to go for atom. Why? Because you might ask me, why don't they go for a solution which is high available? Answer is they can go, and some of the customers do go for only high available solutions, but then for every offering which you take, there is some cost involved, right? So I mean, if you want something extra, you will have to pay extra. That's all. That's how the industry works. So now here it becomes important that you get somewhat idea about Dell Boomi licensing. Okay, how does the licensing of Dell Boomi work, right? So Dell Boomi licensing is impacted or on n number of factors, but the major factor or the key aspect which decides the Dell Boomi licensing is the number of unique connections we consume in our integrations. So understand this, number of unique connections we consume in our integrations is going to decide our Dell Boomi licensing. Now, yesterday we talked about an example, right? What was that example? Salesforce to SAP integration. So what do you guys think? How many connections do I need to make to achieve this integration via Boomi?
2 connections.
2 connections, right? So if I go to Dell Boomi will ask me how many connections do you want to purchase, right? So how many connections do I need to demand for? I need to demand for 2 connections, but at the same time you have to also understand that how many environments you will have. Okay, so generally when you're working in real time, right, for any customer, so typically we will have at least 3 environments. One is dev means where you will do your development and all, right, completely, where you can do POCs, where you can do development, where you can do your unit testing and all. Then you will have QA, where your testing team is going to do the testing. They will raise bugs, they will see if everything is working fine, and then you will have prod. Some companies may have more also, and I have seen some small enterprises who will have only, let's say, they will combine these two and they will have a single environment which they call as non-prod. That's all. I mean, that is very rare, but typically it is recommended to have at least 3 environments, right? Because so that you can have parallel things going on easily, right? So you may be working on some fix which can happen on dev. There must be some testing which might be going in parallel which can happen in QA, and then prod is definitely required, right? Without prod, I mean, so prod is definitely required. So the point I'm trying to say is, whenever you calculate or estimate the number of connections, just don't estimate the number of connections for prod, but also estimate the number of connections for non-prod. Yeah, do not estimate the number of connections for only prod, but do the estimation for non-prod also. So let's say if I have dev and QA and prod, how many number of connections should I demand for?
6.
We need 6, right?
Sorry.
2 for dev, 2 for QA, and 2 for prod. Yeah, so typically what happens is, whenever you will talk to the Boomi executive, right, the Boomi execute recommendation will be that you should purchase 2 times of prod connections for your non-prod environments, because even Boomi recommends that we should have at least 3 environments. So that is their recommendation, that you should purchase 2 times of prod connection for your non-prod environments, right? So that means if you're telling them that you want 2 prod, so by default their recommendation will be that we should have 4 non-prod connections. and these prod connections and non-prod connections are maintained separately. Okay, so from Boomi side, Boomi has two classifications. Okay, Boomi has only two classification. One is prod and another is test, or you can call it as non-prod. They don't have any classification as dev, staging, performance. In different customers ecosystem, you will find different names of the environment, right? Generally it is dev, QA, prod. Some of the customers will have the name of the environment as staging, right? Some of the customers will have the name of the environment as performance, right? So it depends how the customer has designed their complete architecture or the ecosystem. But what I'm trying to say is Boomi has only two classifications: prod and non-prod. That non-prod is also called as test. Anything which is not prod is test for them, that's all, right? So now when you will go and purchase the licenses, the moment you say prod 2, okay, they will account for non-prod as 4. That's all, right? But if you're not interested, you can tell them, because non-prod I only want to, because you will be charged for all these connections you purchase from them, right? Now you might ask me, we were talking about Atom, why all of a sudden we started talking about the Dell Boomi licensing? The reason why we are talking about licensing is there is no separate licensing cost for Atom. There is no separate licensing cost for Atom. So if you want to use Atom as the runtime, you don't need to, they will not charge you anything extra. This is kind of a free offering from Boomi to execute or to run your integration processes. Do you guys understand this? This is a free offering from Boomi to run your integration processes. And that is the one reason why organizations might still want to use Atom, right? Because they feel their business use cases are not so critical. Okay, first of all, it's not that if Atom is not high available, it is going to crash every now and then. Okay, that typically does not happen. But even if, let's say, something of that sort happens, they might still be fine with it, because their integrations might not be uh, so critical, or there is always a trade-off, right, between the money you are spending and the return you get, right? So they might feel that it is not worthy for their business to go and spend for some solution which is high available, but let's use the one which is coming free, right? Now since we started talking about Dell Boomi licensing, I just want to tell you Dell Boomi has classified their licensing into 5 different models. And what are those? There is something called as base, there is something called as pro. Pro stands for professional. Okay, there is something called as pro plus, there is something called as enterprise, and there is something called as enterprise plus, right? So we have got base, we have got professional, we have got professional plus, we have got enterprise, we have got enterprise plus. Now they have given you a table on their website which is quite descriptive. I don't remember the complete table, but generally what I want to tell you is any customer you're going to work in the industry will at least have professional or professional plus as the starting point. Base is just for the customers who want to do some kind of POCs and all, right? Base is not at all recommended to be used for base is only recommended to be used for the uh, training purposes and all. Now these are the only options we have: professional, professional plus, enterprise, enterprise plus, right? And what I want to tell you is this molecule typically comes only with enterprise or enterprise plus. Okay, molecule is not an offering, molecule is not an offering which we have for pro or pro plus, right? So now in the enterprise they might get some more additional features, but if those are not helpful for my business, right? So in such kind of cases, let's say you're using pro plus, maybe you can talk to Boomi executives. they will charge you something additional, and maybe you can get only molecule in the Pro Plus also, I believe, right? So some of the features can be purchased by making extra payments. So let's say you feel my all features in the Professional Plus are sufficient for me except molecule, right? So I think they'll give you an option wherein you can pay some lump sum amount for molecule, and you can get molecule enabled for yourself, right? So this is how it works. I'll recommend you to go through the table. Just type Dell Boomi licensing and that all stuff, and you can go through the table, and the table will give you the complete idea about what is base, what is professional, what is Professional Plus, and all that stuff, right? Any questions from anyone? All right. So now what I was saying, we talked about Atom. Okay, Atom is available in all these subscriptions, right? So now let's talk about molecule. Okay, or else let's park it for now. Otherwise, the whole session will end up talking this. Okay, so now I want to do is I want to go back and I want to execute this integration, right? So I need some kind of runtime. Have we configured any runtime so far?
No.
No. I'll go to test. The action you're attempting to complete requires, so it is saying you should have at least one Atom installed, right? I do not have anything installed because I want to test it out. Okay, so I want to test it out. So here you see there is a button, right? This blue colored button, test, which will help you to test your process, right? So but then at the same time it is asking me that you should have some Atom to run it, right? Or you should have some kind of runtime engine to run it. You might ask me why it is not asking for molecule, because Atom is the simplest execution engine, and right now the account which I'm using is not an enterprise level account, so I don't have subscription for installing molecules. I only can install atoms, right? So I'll go here again. It is asking the action you are trying to do needs to install an atom. I go okay. I will say local Windows 64-bit, and I will say, so you can choose the option whatever makes sense for you. So there is an option local, and there is something called as in the cloud, right? So we will talk about in the cloud one little later. Right now we want to focus on the local one. And another important note which I want to mention over here is when we are talking about the note, this is suitable for, or this is suitable for all the following types of integration. And what are those following types of integration? On-prem
On-prem, cloud,
and hybrid. So you can achieve all three different types of integrations with the help of Atom. Yeah, you can use on-prem integrations, you can achieve cloud integrations also, and you can achieve hybrid integrations also. All right, so I'll go back. So I will just download the installer for now. Okay, so this is a very lightweight installer. So if you go here, you have an installer. So I will say run as, and you have to run as administrator. Okay, when you have to right click and you have to say run as administrator. So this will start your installation, right? Here you will see Atom setup wizard. Next, you have to give some username and the password, right? So now this username and password is of your account. So let's say this is my account, and here is some Atom name. So Atom name is, let's say, test. Okay, or else we can write something like April batch Atom, something like this. Okay, April batch, let's say dev Atom is what we'll call it as initially. Now you can see there is another option called as token, right? So let's say you are having an account subscription, you have the username password, but your support team, right, or your admin team is doing the installation of the Atom. Okay, and they might be doing in the Windows machine or the Linux box, which is fine. I mean, depending on the kind of infrastructure you have. But now when they are doing the installation, they will also get this kind of option where they have to populate the details about the account with which you want to tie this atom. Now the question is, if you're not interested to share the account details with them, right? If you're not interested to share the account details with them, right? Is there any option? Answer is yes, there is an option. So when you were creating, when you got that installable, right? You can also get that installable from here. Manage, go to Atom Management, click on New, Atom, and here when you go to Windows, let's say 64-bit, you go to Security Options. Do you have an option to generate a token? Yes, you have an option to generate a token. So you can say, let's say I want the token to be valid for 1 hour, right? I will say generate other token. So this is my token which is valid for 1 hour, and I can share this token with them instead of sharing the credentials, so that you know they can still do the installation without even the credentials being shared. Again, this is a certification question wherein they'll ask you, like, even this can be asked in the interviews. If you're doing the installation of the atom and if you do not want the credentials to be shared, what is the other mechanism we have, right? So the other mechanism we have is a token, and if the token is there, you can use this. You just need to add the token value. If you choose a username password, we go and use this, right? Hit on next. So now you see it is authenticating your credentials, right? When it is authenticating the credentials, what is happening behind the scene is there is a bridge which is getting established between your account and the atom. Okay, and there will be a constant communication which will keep on happening between the atom and the account, and the communication is always outbound to the atom, which means atom will go and start communicating with your platform. Okay, atom will go and start with communicating with the platform, and for that communication to happen, you must have an internet connection. So let's say you have a machine where you have atom installed and that internet connection goes down because of some reason. So that communication between the atom and the platform is going to stop. Okay, so I'll just hit on next. Okay, it is asking me where you want to install it, right? If you want to change it, you can change it. If you do not want to change it, that's fine, it's up to you. So let's say I say browse. I want to go to D drive. There is something called as Boomi Learning. There is something called as April 2021, and install. Maybe this is the directory which I'm using. D Boomi Learning April 2021 install, and I'll say next, right? Next, next, and we'll say finish. Okay, so it was real quick, right? Within no time we could see the atom got installed. We'll go back. Let me come to the build. Let me just save it. Let me go to the test. Now if you see atom, can you see there is an atom which was not there earlier? Earlier you were getting some kind of warning, right, that you must have an atom or some kind of runtime to execute it. But now do you see an option? Yes, even you can see here, you can go to the atom management, and if you scroll down, you will see one atom. Yes, this atom will have a unique ID called as atom ID. You will have the type of the installable, that is atom. You will have the status. You will have the machine information, date when it is installed, the version, right? And anytime if let's say you feel you want to delete the atom, you want to restart the atom, you can do it. So it is saying unattached because this atom is a runtime, Right now, have we created any environment? Did we create any environment like dev environment, QA, production, anything of that sort?
No.
No, right? So that's why it is calling as unattached, means we have not tied that atom to any environment. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to go test. We go to this atom and we run the test. Okay. When we run the test, so you see this green color bold marks, right? So these green color bold marks indicates that these shapes have successfully executed. It started with a start shape, it ended at a stop shape. So these are the only two shapes we have which got executed. So there are two different types of logs which you need to look at. One is a shape level logs and another is a process level logs. So when you click on the shape, right, and you go at the bottom, so there is a logs, there is something like connection data, and there is something called as document. Okay, so this is very important. It is very important to understand what is document. When you're working in this Boomi world, you will play around this document. So it is the runtime entity which is responsible for execution of any shape in Boomi. It holds the payload or the data which needs to be processed. Yeah, so what I'm saying is it is the runtime entity which is responsible for execution, means this is going to be generated on the runtime. When, what is the meaning of runtime? When your process is under execution. So what I'm trying to say is when the process is under execution, some data is generated, right? That data is encapsulated in form, data is encapsulated as document. So we do not call it as a data in Boomi. We do not call it as a payload. We preferably or essentially call it as a document, but it is not exactly. So I cannot say payload is exactly same as document. This statement is true. I mean, I don't know, even some of you might not know even what is payload, right? So in integration world, payload is a very common terminology which we use. Payload represents the request message passed to any integration process. Okay, actually we call it as a request or response message passed or retrieved from any integration process. Okay, payload will represent the request or response message passed or retrieved from any integration process. This is a very common terminology you will hear when you're working in integration. So what I'm saying is here, instead of payload, we use a terminology called as document. It is a logical representation of the data, or it is the runtime entity. When I'm saying runtime, means this is not produced at the design time. This is produced when your process is under execution. It will hold the payload or the data which needs to be processed, right? But the note is the actual data to be processed can be, or the actual data to be processed, let me write it, sometimes reside in multiple documents. So what I'm saying is we can have one or more documents at the runtime. It is not necessary we will always have one document. Okay, we can have one or more documents at the runtime, and those combinedly will hold the data which is required to be processed. the actual data to be processed sometimes resides in multiple document, and we can have one or more documents at the runtime. So now if you go back, if you go here, can you see there is some document? If you go to the connection data, or in fact even if you go here, I will show you that document, but can you see there is some tick mark, green color tick mark, which says under documents how many documents? One. And when you're clicking on the start shape and you are going to logs, you cannot see anything. Okay, that's fine. Now you go to the stop shape. Can you see something in logs? The
Yes.
timestamp, the logging level, the name of the shape, info, some message, and here there is something called as shape source data. Shape source data means to this particular shape which data came as a source. So the data which came as a source is an empty document. So now the start shape of no data type has the tendency to produce an empty document. And the reason why it produces an empty document is because for any shape to execute, an document must act on it. If a document is not passed to any shape, that particular shape will not get executed and your flow will stop there and then. Now, if I want the flow of control to move from start shape to stop shape, it is mandatory that some kind of document from here, from the first shape, needs to go to the second shape. Otherwise, second shape will not execute and you will not see this green color bold mark coming in. Now, start shape of no data type always produces an empty document, and the reason to produce that empty document is so that the control always jumps on to the next shape. Because if we will take a start shape which does not produce any document, the control will not move to the subsequent shape. So I'll explain you with an example. Let's say I take a star shape of connector type. Okay, so connector type means it can connect to some third-party system. Yes or no? So here, let's say I take a disk connector. What is the meaning of disk? Disk means your file system. Okay, disk means your file system. And which file system does it mean over here? It means the file system where your runtime is installed. So right now, if the runtime is installed in my machine, then for this Boomi platform, disk would mean the file system of the machine where the runtime is installed. Let's say there is some connection, it is asking for some drive. Okay, let's say I'm writing D drive, for example. What is it saying?
The connection name it is asking.
Okay, I was wondering what is it asking. Okay, so I will just write disconnection for now. Okay, save and close. And now it is asking for some operation. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is I change the start shape from no data type to connector type. Connector is disk, action is get, connection is disconnection, and operation is, let's say, some file. Okay, so I'm just giving some file. Let's say sumit dot star, or maybe something like, let's say, some dummy name I will give. Okay, dot txt. So I do not have any file with this name in my D drive. Okay, now you see the representation of the shape got changed. Instead of start shape of no data type, now I have a start shape of which type? Start shape of connector type. Which type of connector I have chosen? Disconnector. Now what is capability of disconnector? Disconnector is capable of performing file related operations in the machine where your runtime is installed. Which atom or which runtime we are going to use? We are going to use atom. And where is that atom installed? Atom is installed in my machine, right? So when I'm trying to perform get operation, I'm trying to look up for a file with this name. In which place? In this place. And from which machine? From the machine where atom is installed. Please underline this thing. Why I'm repeating it again and again? Because if I share my credentials with you, can you log in these on this Boomi platform even from US or maybe UK or maybe Dubai? Is it possible?
No.
It is possible, right? If I share my
Yes.
credentials, you can log in from anywhere, right? Because it just needs a credential, that's all.
Yeah, but Atom we can't use, right?
Even Atom you can use as long as your machine where your Atom is installed is having an internet connection. You can use Atom because these both need the internet connection to communicate with each other, right? So let's say Atom is installed in my machine, okay, and I shared my credentials to someone who is there in US, right? Now that person can still use my Atom if my machine is up and running and has the internet connection. If my machine is up and running and has an internet connection, it is still possible for anyone to use an Atom.
Okay.
There is someone with the name waiting for name 10010 who has joined the session. Can you quickly tell me who is that? There is someone who has joined the session with the name waiting for name. Guys, just make sure these invites, whatever are shared with you, right? Those are not shared further across. Okay. I'll start locking the meeting from next session onwards. I just want only the people who are subscribed to join these sessions, or I know them by some means. Okay. For today, I'm just leaving it. Even yesterday, I saw a couple of people like that. So I should not be seeing anybody, forwarding the invites to your friends, relatives, or your colleagues. Okay. I might stop your subscription also. So just please make a note of that. If you're doing it, if you're not doing, just ignore my statements. Okay. So now what I was saying is, if you logged in from US and Atom was installed in my machine, which is in India, the person in US can log into the platform. He can run some integrations using the Atom which is there in the machine that is in India, provided that the machine in India has got internet connection, right? If the machine in India has got an internet connection, that is definitely possible. But lot of people will assume that it will start and look up for the files in the from the machine where you have logged in, which is incorrect, which is wrong understanding. It will look up for the files from the machine where your Atom is installed, and the Atom was installed in the machine residing in India or US. It was installed in the machine residing in India, right? So even if you log in from US or maybe any other geography, it will always look for the files in the machine where your runtime is installed. So now I'll quickly go to test and I'll say run test. So right now we are into the test mode. Okay. Do you see only there is a green color bold mark on the star shape, but nothing is there on the stop shape? Why is that happening? And even in the documents section, can you see it says star shape retrieved no documents?
That file is not there picked up, so that's why it's stuck at start only.
Absolutely, because there was no file with that name. That file is internally interpreted as a document in the Boomi world. So there was no document generated. Since there was no document generated, nothing could be passed to the stop shape. And as I told you, it is mandatory for any shape to execute to have a document. If we do not have a document acting on a specific shape, that shape does not get executed and your flow of control does not move ahead. You get stuck at that shape only. So like when I started my Boomi journey, I used to be confused. Why do I see sometimes this green color bold mark and why do I not see it sometimes? The reason why you do not see now on the stop shape is because if you go to the stop shape, do you see anything under shape source data? Nothing, right? Because nothing was passed to the stop shape. Stop shape never came into play, right? Now again you go back, you change it to no data. This is executing because an empty document is being passed to the stop shape. At the bottom, you can see shape level logs, and here there is a drop down. You go to view log. Here you can see the process level logs. So what happened in the complete life cycle of the process? There was an initialization where it started executing. It started with a start shape, right? Then it went to the stop shape, and then there is a cleanup. That's all, right? That is whole thing which has happened. You can see the process level logs from here, right? You also have an option to download those logs, right? If you want to see the shape level logs, you can see from here, right? So you know how to install the atom, you know how to initiate the execution. You know there are different types of runtime in Boomi. There is atom, there is molecule, there is atom cloud, there is a group of atoms, and so far we have just talked only about atom. We haven't talked about rest of these, but we at least have an idea that there are multiple types of runtimes, and atom in itself is a single tenant, single node offering from Boomi. It can be used for all three types of integrations. Those are on-prem integrations, cloud integrations, and hybrid integrations. Another important thing you have to understand is whenever you install an atom, you end up tying that atom to an account. And there is a constant communication which is happening between the platform and the account. So right now you're on the platform, right? But where this execution has happened, platform does not do the execution. Who is responsible for doing the execution? Your runtime is responsible for doing the execution. And where is that runtime lying? Runtime is lying in my machine, right? So what is happening is that execution is happening in my machine, and all the metadata means all these logs, all these timestamps are communicated from my machine to the platform, right? And that is why we need an internet connection, first of all, to access the platform, and also in the machine where your atom is installed, so that this data or this metadata can always be exchanged between the machine where the atom is residing and the machine where you are accessing the platform. Or I mean, it has to communicate between the machine where atom is there and the platform. So whatever information you see over here, right, whatever execution is happening, this is not happening on the platform. The execution is happening on the machine where your runtime is there. This whole code which is there behind the scene will go as an input to the runtime. Runtime will execute that and will return the metadata, right? If any shape got executed success, then your platform will turn it as green. If it is like failure, it will turn as red. So that internal execution is happening in the machine where your runtime is there. Right now the runtime is there in my machine, right? So if you just go here, let me go to this D drive, Boomi Learning. So this is the directory where I installed the atom. So in this you can see there are different folders, right? So there is an installation directory, there is a bin directory. We'll talk about these, but these are the different directories where you will have your data, your metadata, and all that stuff. Okay, so if you see here, there is some execution folder. In that execution folder, you will have the details about executions, but that gets cleaned up immediately. Once you execute, those gets cleaned up when you're working on the build tab, because build tab generally what happens is this is only for unit testing. Okay, you test your process, everything looks fine, and it will clean up those things from the backend. We'll talk more on that in detail, but I hope you get an idea how to install the atom, how to basically run a process, right? How to see the process level logs. We will continue doing that. How to see the shape level logs. Any questions from anyone?
One question. Sumit, what is the difference between connection data and shape source?
Okay, it might be same sometimes. Okay, so connection data will represent the data which is generated by the connector. Okay, connection data is the data which is generated by the connection you establish with the end system, whereas source data represents the data which was passed by the last shape to the current shape. So what I'm saying is, if you go here, let's say start shape, right? whatever data is being passed by the start shape to the stop shape, that becomes the source data for the stop shape, right? Let's say earlier we had a start shape of connection type, right? Then connection data indicates the data which is generated out of the connection that was established between the two systems, right? I mean the data which was generated out of the connection which was established between that Boomi platform and the end system. So let's say I was establishing the connection with a file system, right? And the file was present, then that becomes my connection data. And if the same data is being passed to the next shape, then my connection data and the source data might be same also. Okay, we'll do like some examples now. I think the base is set. I hope people understand the basics so far, because so far we have just been talking the basic stuff. I'm trying to make you familiar with the platform, because if I do too many navigations in a single day, you might get confused. So that's why I'm trying to confine myself with the number of navigations I do daily, so that you get some time to absorb these things, you make yourself familiar, and I think from and we will start building the integrations from tomorrow.
Sumit.
Hmm.
No.
Yeah, please tell me.
Sumit,